Greetings. I'm AJ and welcome to Zen Minds, an ongoing conversation with spiritual seekers on their path to Zen. My goal with this podcast is to introduce you to different spiritual practices and programs through direct contact with seekers who have found these programs deeply transformative. I hope this conversation will encourage and motivate you to find your own path to Zen. My guest today is Sam, a 24-year-old young student who lives in Berkley, California and getting ready to do his Ph.D. in clinical psychology, who talks about how he found his Zen after going through several challenges in his life. This particular episodes, we will focus on the 21-day program, also known as the 21 Days Sadhana. Sadhana is a Sanskrit word, means discipline undertaken in pursuit of a goal. Sadguru defines sadhana as everything can be sadhana. The way you eat, the way you sit, the way you stand, breathe, and conduct your mind, body, and your energies and emotions. This is sadhana. Sadhana does not really mean anything specific kind of activity. Sadhana just means that you're using everything as a tool for your well-being. Enjoy the show. Namaskaram, Sam. It's so glad to have you in the show.
Namaskaram. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Before we get on to your set of experiences, give me a little bit background on your upbringing. Like, were you religious from the beginning?
Yeah. I was raised Jewish. My father is Jewish. My mother is not Jewish. My mother is a Christian, but not a very intense or like Orthodox Christian. But they're both take a highly spiritual approach to religion. So my mom actually majored in theology and has a master's from a divinity school and took a very like Christian mystic lens on Christianity and has had a lot of very powerful spiritual experiences in various places, has spent some time doing some sort of like Wiccan earth ceremonies and stuff like that. And then my dad, I would say he's been kind of a seeker his whole life. I mean, also again, was raised Jewish, so we did Judaism together, but we went to, one of the most spiritual hippie temples you can imagine. I mean, no one was like wearing the formal Orthodox garments or anything like that. It was very much like, singing songs and, dancing around and stuff. It was very much in that vibe. That was my temple growing up. And actually now my dad is a practicing Zen Buddhist. He still thinks himself as Jewish as well because he thinks that those two things can coexist. But yeah, he's actually pretty involved with a Zen Buddhist monastery. And he actually has been inducted as a priest into that. So he's very serious about that. So I've definitely had that influence growing up. And my parents are divorced and they've both remarried. And my stepmother as well is also, she has her own teacher that she follows. His name is Thomas Hubel. So I've had a lot of, as I briefly mentioned before, I've had a lot of spiritual influences in my early life as well. Not from the Hindu world specifically, which is why I think it's a little funny that I gravitated towards yoga, but from all these different backgrounds and traditions, that's where I had a lot of that influence growing up. So to me, it was never like, it wasn't unknown, but it was something that I hadn't, as I briefly mentioned before as well, it was something that I hadn't had explained to me in a way that made sense. And so that was something that was kind of key for me, was to find someone who could speak in a way that resonated with me. But it was something that I was quite familiar with growing up, definitely. It was something that was very present in my life a lot. So it wasn't like a huge leap for me to also get invested in it as well.
Right. And so what, What made you really do this course? Was there any event, or was there like small little events which sort of added up, which made you decide like, I got to do it now, and the time is now or never?
The 21 day.
Yeah.
Specifically, yeah, well, it is. It's mostly because I'm starting this Ph.D. program right now in clinical psychology. Is what I'm
Yeah.
about to start in on Thursday is my first class. So I'm like right about to start this 5 year commitment, and it's at a university that actually was founded by, I don't know if you could quite call him a yogi, but he was definitely like a Hindu philosopher type guy who was in a lot of contact with Sri Aurobindo, if you've ever heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
Another, yoga philosopher, yogi type character. And so
Yeah.
this university in San Francisco was actually founded by this close associate of Aurobindo. And so the university itself is very, very open to all sorts of spiritual ideas, all sorts of wisdom traditions. They definitely take that as a very real thing, and they try to incorporate that into their teaching and into their views of health and mental health and how to, help people to fulfill their potential and things like that. So that's why I picked this school, is because it's open to
It
these
was
other perspectives.
right.
But I'm starting this big commitment, this 5 year commitment, and it felt like, I won't really have time to do something like this
Right. And
in
so
the
this,
next couple of years. So this was kind of like, this is the moment to do it. And, there wasn't, this was the one that was available. I mean, it was, I actually only signed up like at the beginning of April because I was supposed to do this whole other trip with some friends and stuff. And then that kind of started to feel like that wasn't the best thing for me to do in terms of my health and my growth. I've actually struggled a lot with chronic digestive problems. And so that was part of why I wanted to do this, was to hopefully get a little bit of healing, hopefully get some of my habits around food a little bit better, a little bit more in check, really get down to the 2 meals a day, really get to the eating in the way that they recommend. But it was mostly just because, yeah, it felt like it was kind of now or never. It was kind of like, it's either I do this now or I don't do anything like this for the next 3 or 4 years. And I had just gotten initiated into Shambhavi, and it was being a really wonderful practice for me. But I just I really wanted to go deeper. I really wanted to accelerate my work. I've felt for kind of since I started working with Yogananda 2.5 years ago, I've felt that some spiritual path is what I want to like really commit myself to. I just wasn't sure exactly which one it was going to be. And I wasn't completely convinced by the Yogananda path. And even the Sadguru, the Shambhavi, I wasn't fully convinced that this was going to be the one that I really wanted to go deep on. And so I really thought of the retreat as like an opportunity to, learn a lot more practices and to really see if this was going to be the one that I really felt like this is what I want to commit myself to. And I really
it's
felt like I
right.
got that.
It is
I really,
experiential,
yeah,
right? To your point, right? It's experiential. It's no matter how much time we spend on thinking about how does the water taste when you're thirsty, it's only when you drink a cup of water, then the feeling, the whole experience of that is so different than what you may write it in a piece of paper or write a thesis on water. And so it has
yeah,
to be
totally.
experiential. And so I think it's the point is what you're making is like you got to take that plunge to really understand the deeper aspects of it. Otherwise it's going to be like people can debate, just like I was debating initially. There are tons of people who can debate constantly over that. That brings me to a question of, you don't have to be religious to take benefit of all these opportunities and teaching trainings rather, which are provided for the well-being of the both mind and body, right?
Yeah, not at all. I
So
don't think of myself as a Hindu or anything at this point. If anything, I still think of myself as Jewish. I mean, I'm not particularly active in that world right now, but if someone asked me what is my religious affiliation, I would probably still say Jewish. But so yeah, that's one of the things I really appreciate about Sadhguru and Isha is that they really make a point of it, that it's non-denominational. You know, it's they frame it in the language of a technology, of a science, of a science of inner well-being, because that's what it really feels like to me. It doesn't feel like I'm being asked to believe anything or asked to do anything that I can't, see for myself. And as to your point about the experiential nature of it, it's you can do the practices, you can go to the retreat and you can have the experience of, oh yeah, this is a really powerful thing. This is really like changing something in me very deeply. This is activating something in me very deeply. That was kind of one of my big, experiences from it, is doing the yogasanas and doing the whole hatha set. And then afterwards just feeling like it's hard to put into words, but it's not a thought. It wasn't a feeling. It wasn't necessarily a sensation, but something about me and my body was activated in a way that it just wasn't before doing those practices. When I woke up in the morning, it was just a very clear and tangible difference of like something is on right now. And so that's to the point about experiencing it. Like, I can read every philosophy book I want. I can read the Gita. I can read the Upanishads. I can read whatever, but it doesn't give me that experience. And so before coming to the retreat, I was still a little bit doubtful about whether this path would be able to give me that. And that's one of the things that was really wonderful and powerful for me about the retreat, is just seeing it firsthand, just being like, yes, like this is real. These practices are very powerful. This is very authentic. This is going, if I commit the time to this will show very tangible results.
Right. And then it's not that, yogasana is offered only in Isha. There are other institutes and other masters probably offering yogasanas as well. But the different thing, especially with Isha, is it's offered in a very classical way. The way it has been envisioned back then, it's exactly the same way. It's almost like an art form. Sometimes I look at it, it's so deeply fluid sort of motion, where one thing flows from one to the one, one asana moves from one to the other very seamlessly. And also keeping I think in one of the discourses, when Sadguru was talking about it, it's almost like your breath becomes a thread between all these different pearls of wisdom, and then you are able to connect the dots, and then you suddenly realize that all of them are in unison, and that is absolutely so different than all the other practices which are so prevalent today. Like you have blasting music going on, and then you're doing you could rather call that stretching. I mean, nobody's debating that. It's perfectly all right. You can do that. You still get the benefit, right? It's not that if you don't believe and you're not going to get the benefit. Of course you're going to get the benefit if you stretch it. But the thing is, if one is really looking for something more when they're doing these asanas, a yoga in the sense of connecting or union or addition between the inner self and the outer self, that's the yoga part. That's a union. When that happens, that is experiential. Like otherwise you would still get the ga of a yoga, if that is what stretching is all about. Right? And so definitely all those benefits are there, just stretching alone. But if one has to take it to the next level, then really it's not so much. I mean, I think even in one of the teachers actually kept saying that, don't worry about the perfect posture. That is not the goal. The goal is that you are focused inside. And when you're focused inside, your internal being sort of becomes at a perfect posture. That was like a mind-blowing thing for me when I realized.
Yeah, same.
Right? It's like, ooh, it's not the body. Like, when you have to tell somebody, like a kid, like, do you want to learn to speak? And they say, sure, you got to start with the letters, alphabets. It doesn't make sense. Like, how does A, B, C, D help me tell a story? How does it help me learn, big words? It's very difficult. But, and that's the reason why I feel that, the yogasana, the body stretching sort of is the alphabets, which leads you to learning the story which the heart wants to tell you.
Yeah.
And then you listen to those, right?
Yeah, it's a very good metaphor. That's definitely the element of it that I really found very unique and special, as well as the whole like inner dimension. It's, it wasn't just focused on the posture. There is this whole element of the subtle body and the visualizations and all this stuff. And that was the part that, yeah, I found like as soon as we added that piece, it was like, whoa, this is like a whole different thing now. This is really like opened up in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, all the little details about, no music, keep your eyes closed, focus very deeply internally, don't have somebody else correct you, all those things. I found that they really made sense to me to do it in that way. And then now I look at, a normal yoga class and I'm like, oh yeah, like I recognize that there are some physical benefits to that, but like I'm not really interested in that.
Yes.
Now that I have
Right.
this other way of doing it, and it just feels so much more, yeah, it looks like it makes so much sense to do it in this way and to have these other pieces incorporated into it. And as I said, they were really, really powerful experiences for me. The hatha specifically. I've actually also considered now going to do the hatha teacher training at some point in the future. We'll see if that happens. But I really feel like I started to kind of fall in love with the hatha programs.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit. I mean, you have mentioned there were quite, there are points or moments in this 21-day sadhana where you felt that something was happening. Describe a couple of those for us.
Yeah, I mean the the biggest one, I guess, where I felt like a really um, kind of like a moment that was different from all the other moments was actually right at the very end when we were getting
Mm-hmm.
the flowers at the very end, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that whole I don't know, like hour
Yeah.
long process that we went through was
Yeah.
like really, really powerful for me. And I like, was crying and, felt feeling all these things and feeling this, huge upsurge. And then just sitting in front of the picture of Sadguru and getting the flower. I don't know. I had my eyes closed, and it just really felt like he was there in front of me. It really felt like, tangibly he was right there. And so that was like a really very, very powerful and meaningful experience for me. And then besides that, I mean, there weren't a lot of experiences that I can like specifically pluck out, because it was kind of like almost every day I was having something, either
Right.
in a meditation or actually, I mean, Bhakti Sadhana ended up being really, really powerful for me a lot of days. That was a really big one. And just that sense of just really, you know, toning my mind down, I guess is kind of how I can describe it. Just kind of really trying to see through all the stuff my mind is projecting onto the world and just
Yeah.
see everything in the same way. Um, and like, I've experimented with that in my own life in various ways. I didn't call it Bhakti Sadhana, but I've just, reading so much about how everything is one and stuff. I've just kind of naturally done that a little bit in my own time, but doing it in the structured way, in the consecrated space, while in the midst of doing all these other practices, it really just like opened up in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And I, had some times where I would like just be so moved by the experience that I would, start crying a little bit and stuff. I had some days where I just felt overwhelmed with like gratitude and joy and
Yeah.
just, very, very big emotional experiences happened to me during Bhakti Sadhana a lot. So that was like pretty consistently a big experience for me, I would say. And then the Shambhavi as well really, really opened up for me in this retreat, because beforehand, I would do it and I would be sitting there at the end, and maybe I would have like a little bit of joy or bliss or whatever you want to call it show up, but in general I was just felt like I was just kind of sitting there. I was just like, okay, I'm just still and quiet right now. But yeah, at the ashram I would have, pretty wild things happen to me sometimes. Sometimes my body would start shaking, or I would start like, twitching and stuff, or sometimes I would
Mm.
just be like smiling and just like have all this like rush of like positive feelings coming out of me, or sometimes I would start making little like sounds or something, just all these little funny things would be happening to me. And it was nice to be with other people and, hear that that was also happening to other people and stuff sometimes, and see that that was happening to other people. So I didn't feel like, oh, I'm weird for this happening or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that was really big for me, definitely, is having the Shambhavi really open up. And that's one thing that thankfully has continued to happen. I mean, it definitely sometimes goes up and goes down. There are some days now where not that much happens, but still, there are definitely days where I still do my Shambhavi and I sit there and I just get this huge uprush of joy or
Mm.
bliss or a really positive feeling. And when that happens, it really like, changes the whole course of my day. It really like just charges me up for the whole day. And so that's really wonderful to feel like I have a tool in my toolkit that I can use every day to get me to that place of just feeling really ready
Yeah.
to, take on
Right.
the day, to see everything and do the best that I can, and, respond consciously instead of compulsively, and stuff like that. That was really probably the biggest takeaway for me, is just that I have these practices now that I can really use every day to get me to that space that I was at and in the ashram.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Sadhguru even talks about like sadhana. The word sadhana actually means using whatever you have as a tool for your well-being. That is sadhana. You're using that as a tool. So using your mind as a tool for your well-being, using the body as a tool for your well-being, using the food, what you look at, and eating it as your well-being. So there is a tremendous opportunity to really focus on the well-being. And this can all be experienced only when you go through this cycle. And you got to keep your mind aside, just like the way I did it, and go through this. It's not a religion. It's about well-being, right? Once you go through this transformation process, there is some
Yeah.
learning which one gets, right? Depending on how much one is ready. Doesn't really matter how much, but as long as you're able to go through this, challenging yourself to go through this, and then there is definitely benefit. If nothing at all, you would stretch, you would tie your
Yeah,
days
and
much better.
and you would wake up early. I mean, that was big for me. It's just seeing that I can wake up at 4:45 and make it
Yeah.
through a day. There were lots of little things. It was actually I was reading Mystic's Musings, one of his books, and he has a quote in there where he talks about even just getting your head to your knee in one of the asanas, that counts as breaking a physical karma. Like that,
Yeah.
anytime we break a limitation that we feel that we have, that is, breaking some level of karma, that is moving in some way towards freedom and towards higher well-being. So there were just so many moments like that in the retreat. There were so many moments of me being like, well, I didn't think I could do this. I didn't think I could wake up at this time and do 4 hours of
Yeah.
practice. I didn't think I could sit all day. I didn't think I could do that.
Right.
I didn't think I could do that. And just all these little limitations being broken and broken and broken. And then, yeah, just all the stuff we learned about how to continue that process, how to continue to move forward and grow and stuff was really transformational for me, to learn exactly as you said, to learn to try to use everything in this way. I mean, I definitely don't succeed in using everything in this way, but just having those little things to check in with. I'm driving, and just to have the little inner engineering reminder to do, or to have the bhakti sadhana to just try to look at things with devotion while I'm walking down the street, or driving or eating or anything like that, or thinking of doing things as an offering, or any of these tools that we were given to just try to make our whole lives be tools for our well-being. And I really like
Yeah.
that they frame it in that way, that they don't frame it as you were saying, that they don't frame it as a religion. They don't frame it as, believing in this thing or worshiping this thing. They really frame it as like, this is about our well-being. This is about,
Yeah.
feeling
I,
better, doing better work, being
yeah.
more alive, being more involved. And that
Right. I
really
mean,
speaks to me.
yeah, that is very different than all the other teachers who share this knowledge. Sadhguru's way of teaching is so different than the other ones. Like, he says, well, this every time I read a book or every time I listen to him, somehow I feel that he's teaching how to live at your fullest. Right? It's not like, dumbing down your mind. It's not coming down where you're not able to function, but coming down to a level where you're more productive, you're more exuberant, where you're more joyful, happy, and those states can be achieved using all these tools. Now let's a little bit talk about the program. 21 Day Sadhana is not easy. It's like
No, not at
18
all.
hours. It starts
Yeah,
very
a lot.
early. So tell me a little bit about the high level, like the schedule and then the food and what appealed to you, what you struggled with.
Um, yeah, I mean, it was interesting as I went through it. I mean, there were different things that became challenges and then kind of stopped being challenges. So like definitely the first week, I mean, waking up was quite a challenge, and waking up at 4:45 and then just staying awake for the whole day once I had woken up that early was definitely quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I mean, as we progressed, actually the balancing sadhana became quite a challenge for me as we progressed. I mean, just knowing that we would do all this stuff, and then we would have 40 minutes of balancing sadhana every or twice a day. That became a thing that I had to
Yeah.
that became like a mental block that I had to work my way through. I had to like not think about, try to not focus on the fact that we had to do that. But yeah, it was interesting to see that some days, I would be like, oh, I just really don't want to do this hatha session. I just really, really not looking forward to
Mm-hmm.
this. And then the next day I'd be like, oh, I'm super looking forward to this hatha session. So like it would really go up and down. And some days I'd be like, oh, I really need a break to take a nap in the middle of the day. And the other day I'd be like, oh yeah, like let's go take a hike. Like I
Yeah.
don't mind. Like let's go sit in the abode. Let's go do anything. So it was really like every day it would shift. As one day I'd be like, oh, I'm super hungry today, I really want some more food in between. And then some days I'd be like, oh, I don't even want breakfast, who needs that? So it was very interesting how every day was like a new thing was the challenge. But every day there was some aspect of it that was hard, and some aspect of it that was like, I don't want to do this. But that it was very inconsistent about what that challenging aspect would end up being.
Yeah. I think that is in my mind, that is very profound, right? I mean, the one thing, and I went through very similar like experience, like every day was like different. But the learning part in there is that you are not the same every day.
Yeah,
That is the one
definitely.
thing, right? Somehow we feel that I'm the same person who was yesterday. In fact, I'm not. Like every
Yeah,
single day, I'm a new person. Every single moment, I'm a new person. But that became very evident when you go through this routine. To your point, like, one day I'm looking forward to this yogasana, the other day I'm not. And then the the moment you reflect back on, it's like, who am I? Like if
yeah,
my if my wants and needs and beliefs keeps changing every single day, who's that person who's saying that I want this, I don't want this, I like it, I don't like it? Because that person apparently is behind all these needs and wants. Like he's the one who's deciding, right? I mean, that's a great opportunity to reflect back. It's like, oh my God, yesterday I was so much into it. Today I don't want to do it. Who are you talking? Like who is the
yeah,
person who's judging, right?
yeah. That's a very good point. That was very every day was so different that it is like, yeah, what is the thing that's staying the same here?
Yeah, right, right. And yeah, talk about the food, right? The food was also something which was different. 2 times a day, getting fed 35% raw vegetables, uncooked food,
Hmm.
35, 40, and then the rest of them like a little bit of protein and all healthy food. So, how was the food Did it suit you? I mean, wasn't Indian per se, right? I mean, there were like a lot of Indian
Yeah,
spices in most of them, but
I like the food a lot actually. I've been trying very actively for the last year or two to move myself towards that diet anyway. So I kind of already only eat two real meals a day. My problem, or before, was more like snacking, specifically like
yeah,
late night, like after
yeah,
dinner and stuff. I would tend to have too much food.
yeah,
But in terms of the meal structure, it was actually pretty natural for me. And the food itself, I actually really enjoyed it. I try not to eat too much meat nowadays, anyways, and yeah, just seeing that like it could actually taste good with all these restrictions was cool because I
yeah,
had struggled to find ways to fit the pranic diet and actually make the food taste good. So
right.
that was
And
nice. And I know some people said that like they were really missing their home cooked food and stuff, but yeah, I didn't really feel that way. I actually quite enjoyed the food.
yeah, no, I'm very much like you. I was a snacker before, and I would eat all day, and I wouldn't call myself overweight, but I had uneven weight distribution throughout my body. And so there was sort of like blocking energies.
Yeah, definitely.
And so this 2 day restriction actually opened up opportunity for me to be mindful of, you know, eating. Like what I put into my body, I become. And so
Yeah.
that changed my complete life. Like after I come back from the sadhana, I may skip, let's say, a sadhana, yogasana a day or two because I don't
Hmm.
have time. But I'm very, very, very mindful of the food. I've stopped eating almost all the rice if I don't have to. I question, like, if I am hungry, really, only then I eat. So the result is that, not that that was my goal, about 12 pounds of weight I lost.
Wow.
But, not just the weight, the thing which I've realized is very hard to explain it. It's like by eating less, I feel more energetic. There is
Yeah,
something
yeah.
which is changing. I'm losing all the lethargy, I'm losing all the laziness, I'm losing all the dullness of the mind.
Hmm.
And it's the exact opposite I would have initially thought of. Like if I don't eat, I will be like tired, I will be angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's exactly opposite.
Yeah, exactly. I felt that way too. Of like I was surprised at how little I had to eat at the ashram. I thought I would have to eat more and more, but actually after the first week, I felt like they were giving me too much food. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't need all this. Like I just felt so I
Right.
just felt so charged up.
Yeah.
And yeah, that has really changed for me as well. Since the retreat, my whole experience of eating is so much better now. I just my relationship with food is so much better. It's not I mean sometimes, whatever, but most of the time I don't see it as just a commodity or it's just a thing I need to like shove into my body. I really see it as like, this is my life. This is life sitting out here on the plate. And that was another one of those little tools that they gave us that has been super great for me, is just to look at the food like for what it is. It's our lives sitting out there. Without it, we wouldn't live. And just, really, yeah, to be much more mindful of what I'm eating, when I'm eating, how much I'm eating, this whole element of gratitude for the fact that it's, willing to give itself to me and to become my body and stuff. And all that has been a really, because I also, yeah, definitely struggled with my relationship with food before the program. So that's been a really wonderful change. And also just like sitting on the floor, doing the little invocation before we eat and stuff. I mean, I don't always sit on the floor anymore. I'm like living with my parents right now, so we, eat dinner together and stuff. But
Yeah.
when I can, I try to do that. And I definitely, whenever I eat, I like take a moment at least before and I just look at it for a second. And I, just sit there for a second instead of just rushing into it. And yeah, that's been very great for my, as you said, for my energy, for my lethargy, for my mental clarity, all these things. It's amazing what just like a small change like that can really do. And that's part of what it was so great to me about the retreat, is that they just gave us it was so comprehensive. Like, as you said, it's like a life, it's like a lifestyle. It's not like, a teaching in some way. It's like, this affects everything. Like, this affects the way we drink water. This affects the way we sit, the way we stand, the way we sleep, the way we eat. It was so comprehensive that I feel like they really gave us all the tools that we need to like really live this life and really like embody these principles that they talk about. And yeah, I don't think I would have gotten that without going on this retreat. So that's another reason why I was so happy with the retreat, is that I really feel like they gave us what we needed to push this forward and to continue it in our lives.
Yeah, definitely. And so what do you say to people who are still deciding to take this course, be it inner engineering or 21-day sadhana? What is a piece of advice or suggestion you would give them?
Well, I think it definitely depends a lot, because something that I noticed in the retreat is that, everyone was there for a different reason. There was everybody from, I don't remember everybody's name, but from the guy who was there because his wife made him go, all the way to
Right.
all the way to I don't know, I think his name was Ramesh, the guy who was in silence the whole time. So there was like very different levels of commitment and different levels of, reasons why people were there. And I feel like there's probably some level where I would maybe recommend that they don't go yet if they're like really don't feel committed to this world or to this path, just because it is quite intense. And I mean, I remember one guy had to leave, actually. So like for some people I would say that maybe it is too much right now. But I think for anybody who is who likes Sadguru, who is at all committed to some sort of spiritual path, I think that this is just a wonderful opportunity and will really push you past a lot of limitations. Because as you said, right, I mean, you came in being pretty skeptical of Sadguru, and it worked really well for you. So just some level of skepticism I don't think is enough to keep you from going. But I do think there's probably some people who are not ready for it right now, because it is a really big commitment and it is really intense. But it seemed like almost everybody who was there got a lot out of it, and it was a really, really great experience. And it's so structured, and it's so well taken care of, and the volunteers really think of everything, and they really cover everything in so much detail that I think even someone who's like pretty casually involved in the spiritual path will get a lot out of this process. And then I guess I would say the same thing for inner engineering as well, which is that I think for most people they would get a lot out of it, but I do think there are probably some people out there who Sadguru is just not the right person for them. And, they would be better off with somebody else who they resonate with a little bit more, because I do think there's some element of like, clearly he's a very, powerful person, a very knowledgeable person, a very wise person, has all these, abilities to make these faces and stuff.
Right.
But I do kind of imagine that there are some people who he's just not the right person for them, and they would be better off looking for someone else. But I think for anybody who's listening, if you feel at all like he seems like good for you, then inner engineering is a great choice, and it will be really, really transformative. And this retreat is a great choice. So
yeah, right. Even a little bit of skepticism is okay, but you gotta go through this transformation to really understand. So definitely, very good. Thank you so much, Sam, for talking to me today. It has been wonderful.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to do it.